Hello and welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast, hosted by Daryl Dittmer, where we talk about the fight or fights that so many of us engage in this lifetime, as well as ways to potentially alleviate those fights. Let's get started. Hey there. I get asked a lot, what is the fight referred to in When I Stop Fighting? What are you fighting? What's the fight all about? Long story, lifelong story, I should say. It's something that I've been working on and with my entire life. But I guess the bottom line, and to answer the question, what is the fight? The fight is with ourselves. The fight's with myself. That's who I've been fighting my entire life. That's an interesting realization to come to, because for me, when I finally figured out who and what I was fighting, and it happened to be me, it's very sobering, to say the least. So I'll tell you a little story about how the whole thing came about. And my mentor, or sponsor, as they talk about in 12 steps, and I've been involved in the 12 steps for a long time, and my sponsor's name was Bud. And mentor and sponsor are synonymous for those who don't have those experiences. But so Bud was my mentor, and I, as I mentioned, I fight everything, and not so much anymore, but I used to, and that was just a part of me. It was a part of my fabric. It was a part of what I did. So as I was wrestling with some problem, or fighting with some issue, Bud said to me, "Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops." And I don't know exactly how much that meant to me, because he probably said that to me almost 39 years ago. But it has meant something to me for a long time, and I think about it almost on a daily basis. And the reason I think about it almost on a daily basis is because the fight is the fight, and it's something that I do every day to one degree or another. And it's diminished a lot over time, but the road gets narrower and the fight gets more subtle. When I was 19 years old, I was fighting drugs, and I was fighting alcohol, and I was fighting to be sober, and I was fighting, the big stuff, the big gorilla in the room kind of thing. And that's, a lot of times when we're young, that's what we're doing. We're fighting those big things in our lives, and whether it's our parents or whatever it is when we're young. But ultimately, the fight is with ourselves, because if we're not fighting ourselves, there's a very good possibility we're not fighting the rest of the world. So, Bud said that to me, "Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops," which is exactly why my book and this podcast are named the way they are. And spoiler alert, my second book is called When You Stop Fighting, and that will be out in the third quarter of 2024. But that is neither here nor there at the moment. It just shows how important this topic is to me, and I'm hoping, as I relate some of these stories and some of these things, that it will become important for you to think about and recognize and look at how you fight, because getting sober is one thing, and then the rest of life is, if we've gotten sobriety down, the rest of life is, okay, what am I going to do with that? And that's the big part. That's the other 800-pound gorilla in the room, because that's where everything happens. How am I going to choose to live? How am I going to choose to conduct myself and choose to conduct my life? So when I first got sober, it was, they hit me with all these principles and one day at a time and first things first and uh, to thine own self be true and this too shall pass and all these things that I didn't understand at all, but I wanted to. I definitely had the willingness to try and understand those things, but I didn't, and I also didn't understand exactly how much I fought. So, you know, when I would have a feeling that I didn't like or a thought that ran through my head that I didn't like, or it wasn't, what I thought was right based on what these people were telling me, I would chastise myself for having the feeling or having the thought, and that's the fight. Telling ourselves, oh, you're not supposed to think that, or oh, you're not supposed to feel that, and that's the fight. Because thoughts come and go, feelings come and go, and they generally pass through if we allow them to do so. And stopping on those and, getting angry with ourselves for having those feelings or those thoughts is the fight. That is the fight. So, and I mentioned earlier, the road narrows and the road gets more subtle, and it truly does. There's think about the people who we've let live rent free in our heads. Somebody says something we don't like, or if we're younger, our parents say something or our friends say something. Somebody's pissed us off or whatever it is, and they're living rent free in our heads. And as we're trying to root that stuff out and kick it out of our heads, that's also a fight. That's another way that we fight. Um, Even today, and this is a long time later, and I can laugh at myself now, which I do a lot because that's just who I am. But I have a certain routine that I do every day, and it has to do with meditation, it has to do with breathing exercises, and it has to do with practicing gratitude, and I do that every day. And sometimes I give myself permission to take Sunday off. Exercising is a part of that. There's certain dietary things that I do for myself that are a part of that. So there's a lot of things that we can set up as disciplines for ourselves, and it's so important when we do that, especially if we know we're doing our best and we know we're doing well, and we're actually doing the work. Then I think it's really important to allow ourselves a little bit of grace, allow ourselves a little bit of permission and allowance to not be perfect. And I think that's where a lot of people fight. They fight by trying to be perfect, and when they're not perfect, they turn on the ass kicking machine. And the ass kicking machine was something I carried on my back for a long time. And if I did something that wasn't what I thought was the right thing, the ass kicking machine was turned on, and it took a long time to turn it off. So those are the fights. Those are the things that, we can talk about and discuss as we go on, with this podcast over the weeks and months. But I just wanted to answer that question about the fight so that maybe if you're doing it with yourself or fighting yourself, you'll be able to recognize it. And we'll see you on the next one.